Welcome to Pathways to Greatness, where we explore the journeys of exceptional individuals who have achieved remarkable success in their fields. Whether you're an aspiring athlete, a business leader, or simply someone striving to reach your full potential, this podcast is your guide to unlocking the greatness within you. Join us as we dive into inspiring stories, practical strategies, and the mindset shifts that can transform your path to greatness. Let's embark on this journey together. Hello and welcome back to the Pathways to Greatness podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Forrester. And in today's episode, and I know I say this a lot, I just got super pumped up and energized after this conversation with Nobel Sheep. And that's Asley and Jose. And they are two wonderful men who have dedicated their lives to helping young people and sharing their story and helping them develop leadership skills and all the things that are necessary to get through life. And there's so many different things that resonate with me with them. One is their faith forward and they're not afraid to show it. And I really appreciate that. And especially in the space that they're in. And again, not like that they are hammering people over the head with their faith. They just share their message and share the light of Christ through a message that will resonate with all young people, whether you're focused on faith or not. It's just you can't help but get energy and get energized from the two of them. And there's so much wisdom and knowledge in what they share. And we talk a lot about leadership. We talk a lot about life examples, and it's too much to try to share in a short minute or 2-minute introduction. But I just want to encourage you to listen to this one, maybe a little different than you listen to some of the other episodes, because we start off with, don't just consume things. What I'm going to challenge everyone with is listen to the episode and think of one, maybe two things that you want to put into action today. And it would be great if you shared it with me, shared it with them, because we want to do more than just consume. We want to do more than just make you feel good by listening to the conversation that we have. We want to make sure we're moving people to make change. And I share a little bit of my story, and Asley shares his story, and Jose does his as well, about how we just have to make changes and make a decision to be purposeful about that. So without further ado, Nobel Sheep. And now the awkward transition from us talking normally to now having a podcast. Yeah. So gentlemen, welcome to the Pathways to Greatness podcast, everybody. This is Jose and Asley. I even asked you before, Asley. And they are Nobel Sheep, and I've been following them for a while now. And I was introduced to you guys just through your feed from Brittany Richmond, because I know that you guys cross speaking paths quite often, and you have that same youth space focus. So that's where I first started seeing your content and love it. I also have to tell you, I've really enjoyed the stories that you've put up when you've been talking about Bible verses and sharing Proverbs. Yes. Really, really like that stuff. Love it.
And that's at the core of our hearts, you know. So big shout out to Brittany Richmond, you know, who's a great connector in our space. She's really just kind, warm. Ever since we met her, not only she sets fire on the stage, but she's also such a great person off of the stage. And so that's been a blessing for us to know her and be introduced to the people that she's connected us with. So,
yeah. And we love to meet with other believers as well. I think being in the youth space can be heavy. Yep. And so faith has really been the foundational element of us as brothers, as friends, which I'm excited to get into that story, but also in our business.
That's awesome. I love it. I love faith first. That's what it's all about. So before we get started, gentlemen, I always play a game to get started. So each of you are going to have to participate when I ask this question, and we'll go from there. So I play Would You Rather.
Okay.
All right. You ready? Would you rather freeze time or go back in time?
Freeze time for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want to give an elaboration as to why?
I don't think. I think this is rapid fire, right?
No, not at all. No, I was going to ask the question, so I appreciate him asking you that question.
Oh, I would freeze time because I was thinking about, man, if I just knew now what I knew, or if I just knew then what I knew now, I would have done a lot of things differently. And today I was reflecting on I'm 29 years old, and I'm like, man, imagine if I had started this business when I was 25. So I was like, let me just freeze time right now and learn everything that I can now at 29, so that when I'm 39, I'm not regretting some things.
Sure. Let me ask you a follow-up to that. Would the 25-year-old listen to your 29-year-old self?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
That's a lie.
No, I believe. I think I would have. I was always very driven and ambitious, but I never imagined entrepreneurship.
Okay. Fair enough. All right.
So for me, I would definitely go back in time. And I would go back in time to like when I was a baby, just to see like, you know, of course, my mom, my dad, how they took care of me and my brother. But like, cause right now I have two kids, right? I have a one who's 4.5 years old and I have a 2-year-old. And like the moments that I have with them, they may not remember those moments, but I am. And so I would love to go back to the time when I was like a baby, a kid, just to see like the moments that I don't remember, but the joy and the fun that my parents used to have with me and my brother. So
Asley has a lot of funny baby pictures.
I do, right? So I want to know the stories behind the pictures and the outfits that I was wearing too. So.
Oh, that's awesome. I really enjoy that. You're one of two people that have said they would go back in time to experience the joy. Most people say they want to go back and change something or meet someone, which is all fine. It's everybody's story. I like the fact that, and I had not thought about it when the first person had said it, so I would have been in the other camp of going back and relishing in the joy, the wonderful memories that we have, because we always reminisce about them, but how many times do we want to go back and just be in them versus trying to fix the problems?
Amen.
So that's how you're wired. I like it. All right. So the next one, would you rather live without music or TV?
Ooh. Now does YouTube count as TV? Because technically,
yes, because there's video and imagery involved.
I'd say without TV.
Ooh.
Yeah, there was a season in my life where my sister and I were living together in college, and we went like entirely minimalist. Like we had no Wi-Fi at our house, no TV in our house. We just had books, but we would play music as like just background noise, like chill hop. So I need some sort of sound in the background, but it doesn't have to be TV because I'm usually not watching it. I'm multitasking.
And this is actually crazy that we're having this conversation because I know it is in my heart to stop watching YouTube for a long time, as well as just stop watching videos in general, because I feel like I'm getting a lot of advice and suggestions, and I really want to hear a clear voice. And so for this question, I definitely choose the no sound and probably do music, but like you said, just probably instrumentals, just to kind of figure out what's in my own head, you know, what's the thoughts coming to me and how I can make clarity out of those.
Well, what's unique about us is we don't watch like TV, like people, like we don't watch movies, TV shows. We're always watching other business people on or podcasts or
speakers,
things like that.
You know, like speeches,
motivation on YouTube. So that's what he's referring to.
Sure. No, I get it. And a follow-up question to that is we consume so much and I feel like people have become addicted to consuming, but not putting those things that they consume into practice. What are your thoughts on that?
1000%. And I feel like because we're listening, it's almost like we're being productive as we're listening, but we're really not. And so I found moments in my life to where I could listen to the same thing over and over again. But I heard somebody say this, like, if your life doesn't change, or like if you're not learning is like making a new action, right? It's correcting something. So if that's not happening, you're just wasting your time, which is why partly I want to stop listening to these videos because I feel like I'm wasting my time because I'm not really taking, I know what I need to do personally, but these videos are not helping me take action.
Yeah, like I just started taking fitness more seriously, and Asley's like, all the hours you spend on YouTube watching other people work out, you could be working out. And I was like, you are right. And so I literally stopped just following fitness because they're just teaching me new moves, but I'm never going to the gym to actually use them. I'm just being inspired by them, but it wasn't pushing me to go to the gym actually apply that.
Yeah, and I hope people are listening to this because we're all guilty of this.
Yes.
And it's something that I heard a long time ago is other people can't do the push-ups for you. And so many times we are looking for other people to do the work. and it makes us feel good. And like you said, I think it hits that dopamine response of, hey, I'm listening to this. This makes me excited. This is great. And then I can just go back to all the distractions. But will you actually write down your goals? Will you actually write out the steps that you want to accomplish throughout the day, throughout the week, whatever it may be?
Yes. And even in that, just make sure you're always tuning into this podcast, though, okay? Yes. No matter what you turn off, make sure this is in your continued listening space.
Preach. Keep it going. And leave a review and share. So we know the game. All right. So one more. So would you rather have pizza or tacos?
Oh,
I know your answer. Go ahead.
What you doing? Huh? Man, if I could, so I'm lactose intolerant, unfortunately. So and I can do pizza. So if I could, without any lactose intolerance, period, I would do pizza all the way. And what I would do is barbecue. I would add some pepperoni on there. I would add some pineapple. I would just go crazy and just add all the toppings just to enjoy that with premium cheese, the best cheese you can find in town.
Yeah. So I'm Mexican, and so it's going to have to be tacos.
Oh, yeah.
Now, locally, the two of you are in my hometown from where I grew up. Where would you get tacos in Gainesville?
My house.
Oh, okay. What if you had to go out to eat and your house wasn't available?
Cilantro Tacos is a good spot in town. That's very local. Sublime Tacos too is on the east side of town.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
not Sublime.
He doesn't like that. For pizza, though, because I know you're probably going to ask that question for pizza, Satchel's Pizza, if you're in town, Satchel's is definitely a staple to eat. Leonardo's used to be a good pizza place.
Leonardo's.
Used to be.
I know.
The pain of progress, right?
I would say there's a lot of food trucks now that are starting to pop up. And so there's like 3 in like between High Springs and Gainesville that I've enjoyed and I feel like are pretty authentic. One fun fact about me that's not so much fun is a couple years ago I randomly developed an allergy to cilantro and avocados. And so when I go get tacos from somebody, I need to double check, is your meat marinated in cilantro? Is your salsa, does it have cilantro? Like, so that's why I said my house, it's safest option.
Definitely, because with Mexican food, there's a lot of cilantro and avocado for sure.
People are going to look for my house as a restaurant.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, last one. This isn't a would you rather, but it's a great one. And if you decide you want to do this as a team, you can do this, but also selectively. If you had a warning label, what would it say?
Ooh, if I had a warning label. What would it say?
I've never been asked.
For me, I would say my warning label is batteries are fully charged. And by that, I mean, whether it's morning or night or afternoon, batteries are fully charged, 100% charged up.
Asley is on level 10. Like I always say, who needs caffeine when you have an Asley in your life? Because at 4 a.m., 3 a.m., he is fired up, turned up. And sometimes I'm like, if I was to hook up like a brain or a neurological scanner machine on him, the machine would break because he's like literally sitting next to him. He's exerting heat because he's just on the go.
We're fired up.
Yeah, he's so fired up. For me, I guess warning, might be cheesy, but it just be like, he loves Jesus.
Oh,
so he's gonna get tired of
nothing cheesy about that.
He's gonna get tired of me talking about Jesus.
So I had one other guest. She's a volleyball recruiter. She's awesome. And when I asked her that question, it was, beware, you will hear about Jesus in a conversation. So
yes.
Yeah, it's one of those things. So when it's life-changing, you just can't help but share. Because we're all quick to tell our friends about the new restaurant or the best favorite restaurant or the new TV show, but we're reluctant to share about what Jesus has done in our lives.
Yeah. This was fun. We've never been started a podcast with the game, so thanks for setting the trend for us.
There you go. Awesome. I love it. Well, it gets the wheels turning, and it helps you and I, the 3 of us, to connect, and it gives the audience a chance to get to know you guys other than what we're going to talk about. So I started Pathways to Greatness at the beginning of 2023, reluctantly. I had always thought about doing it, but with imposter syndrome, I was like, what's the point? There's 2 million podcasts in the world today. Why does it need another one? But I felt, you know what? I need another one, and I need more conversations like what we're going to have today. And I titled it Pathways to Greatness because everyone has a different definition of greatness. And everybody needs to hear that everybody has a different definition, because we fall into that comparison trap, and what we see of you doing great, we may think that that's us, but we need to find that for ourselves. But the other part is that we all have a different pathway on that journey to trying to reach greatness. And my ultimate goal is to bring people on like yourselves to share tips and strategies and tactics of how you've navigated that, because I don't want people to quit. And I know that's a message that resonates with the two of you, because if you watch any of their content on Instagram, it's definitely consistent with not quitting, finding out new ways and challenging yourself and being true to yourself. So with all that being said, what would you say your definition of greatness is?
Because we love Jesus so much in the scriptures, man, I would say the greatest among you shall be servants, right? That is the key core scripture that comes to mind. And so, even if we're off stage, on stage, as we're living our lives, Jose and I really live this servanthood type of lifestyle. You get what I'm saying? From the least of these to the greatest of these, from the speakers that we meet to the students that we meet, we just want to be able to serve you in one way. Sometimes it's with a high five, sometimes with a great word of encouragement, sometimes with a hug, and sometimes it's even just with our presence. But we just want to let you know that we are here to serve.
And that's literally like the foundation of even our brotherhood within ourselves. Like I always tell people, the only competition that me and Asley have is really trying to outserve one another. And it's really hard to outserve him.
Yeah. And that's, and I'm really happy that you brought this up, because I've mentioned this on several other episodes of we're commanded to be the good neighbor. And so many times in life, we talked about consumer. We wait for the other person to be the good neighbor before we are willing to be a good neighbor back. That's not what we're being told to do. It's what you shared of serving others and showing that example, that Christ-like example that we need to be, without them doing it in return. Because how many people did not do it in return to him, so much so they hung him on a cross. So I think that's a great definition of greatness. So what I'd love for you guys to do is each of you give a little bit of your background individually, and then bring it together about what Noble Sheep is, what the two of you do together, because I want people to know what you do, because the world needs to hear more good stories about things that you do, because we hear about all the bad that's in the world, but there's a lot of good out there as well. So take it away.
Come on, from the youngest to the oldest. You got
it. So I was born in North Florida in a really small country town with one caution light called Jennings, Florida, located in Hamilton County. So it's about an hour and 30 minutes north of Gainesville, Florida, where we're currently residing. And in that small town, it was also rated as one of the top 10 poorest counties in the whole state back when I was in high school. And in middle school, my parents ended up separating, and my dad became a single parent where he was raising my sister and my little brother and I. And that came with its challenges, especially as the oldest, having to kind of take the load and the weight of my family's and the responsibilities, and just trying to do things at 11 and 12 years old for my dad so that he can provide for the family. And so with that, though, I always knew that I had to be the best role model as possible for my siblings. So while trying to take care of my siblings, trying to run things around the house, like paying bills, running errands, things like that, even at 15, taking them to their pediatrician appointments because my dad couldn't. Throughout all of that, I also understood the importance of education, because my dad pushed school all the time. He just believed so much in the power of education. And so even when I didn't want to go to school or do my homework, like he always pushed me to succeed in school. And so with that, it paid off, even though I would get annoyed at him because my senior year I took a leap of faith and I only applied to one school only. I had no backup plan. I didn't know anybody else that had taken this route that I was about to go on, but I said I'm only applying to one school, and that's the University of Florida. I just saw myself wearing orange and blue. I was never a football fan, but it's just the prestige of the university, and I knew I wanted to help people. My dad pushed me to go to medical school, and I just thought that UF would have been the top choice for me to go to school and get a good pre-med background so that I can be more competitive when I applied. And so, long story short, I applied, and not only did I get into UF, but I got a full ride scholarship to the University of Florida. And I remember just thinking, like, I didn't think this was possible. And so my sister, the following year, also took the same leap of faith, got into the University of Florida and got a full ride scholarship. And then our little brother, everyone in our community is like, I mean, you might as well, both of your siblings are you. He's like, I don't want to live in their shadows, but he ended up ultimately applying as well and getting into UF on a full ride. And so I always share with students and just people in general, you have the power to change the trajectory of your family's life. And that's what started with me. Like, I had never seen it done before, but I always say I'm an overcomer. I overcome things so that others can walk right over them, because my sister and little brother going to college wasn't as foreign to them or as scary to them because I had already gone through that. And so when our backgrounds in leadership, and that's what we do across the country. And one of the things I always say is leadership can be lonely, but when it comes to making history, you're the only one. Just keep going, because once you make history, everyone's gonna want to like now learn and hear more and ask questions. How? Obviously, for me, everything I point back to God, Jesus. I'm like, he opened the door for me. Like, I didn't even feel like I would get into UF. I didn't have the ACT scores, the GPA, all of that, but I just had this faith that if I just dream big, like, it was just gonna happen. And it did, and the rest has been history now. Been able to retire my dad, been able to surprise him with keys to his home, and now get to do life and travel the world with my best friend.
Wow, that's awesome. Real quick, let me jump on some of the things that you said, because you gave us so much and I really appreciate it. And hearing your story of growing up and having to raise your siblings, do you ever feel like you missed out on a childhood?
Yes, all the time. Like, I went to Disney in Orlando when I was 19, and I felt like I was 12. Like, I'm like, this is what it felt like if I was a kid and been able to afford to go there. So yes, all the time I think about, after 11 years old, I had to grow up fast.
Then also think about the advantages that also lended you to be where you're at today, because there are a lot of other people that have been in that same situation that you're in, that you now can serve and lead, and how you got through all that.
Yep. He likes to call it what was it, the trauma, like the triumph to the trauma
to triumph.
Trauma to triumph. That's my life. So if I could write a book, I would title it that, and I'd give him some royalties for giving me the title idea.
Well, you definitely need to write. Both of you need to write books, because that you talked about legacy, you talked about leaving things behind. That's writing a book is one of those things that will cross generations way beyond when you're gone. Because the sad thing is that we're literally a generation away from just being forgotten. Once we're like at that great grandparent stage. Like, my kids don't know my great grandparents. They barely know their grandparents, because we had children later in life. And not that there's anything bad or wrong or anything, but it's part of life. It just goes on. But if you leave a legacy of a book, it also broadens your reach of how many people that you can impact as well.
Amen.
Okay. So I had to ask that question, because it was in my mind, because I lost my dad when I was a senior in high school. He passed away from lung cancer. And so I had to take over the family business and work that until I graduated UF. So there were times that I felt as if I missed that college experience, because that's that comparison that we fall into. And it's like, well, that's what I was supposed to have. But I'm so thankful. One, it probably protected me from making really stupid decisions.
Amen.
And then it also gave me a leg up on the competition, because I was already 5 years ahead of where everybody else was. So that's what drew me to that connection and wanting to ask that question.
My. I'm fired up, y'all, because as you heard, Jose had his own pathway, and that pathway for him included education. Education was a vehicle that he used to be able to get his family out of the certain situations that they were in. And now he's able to inspire many through that particular story. My story, I usually like to start before I was here. And so my story is here partly because my mom and my dad fell in love in Haiti. They were both Haitians, so they met there, fell in love there. And then my mom and him moved to Switzerland, to where she was pursuing nursing school. She had my brother in Switzerland, and then after she finished nursing school, she started working in Canada. And so my dad, of course, followed her to Canada, where they, of course, lived together, and that's where I was born. Okay, so for those of you that don't know, I am Canadian. I'm still a Canadian citizen, and so if you see go to Montreal, that's where I grew up for the first 10 years of my life. Fast forward, we end up in Gainesville, Florida, because my dad's brother had a business. And so they merged together to he would do like the taxi side of things, and my uncle would do the medical transport side of things. But just to let you know, the reason why I want to share this background story is because there is no way that Jose and I could have intentionally met. All right. It was just so many things happening outside of our nature for our life stories to eventually cross paths. All right. So you were probably asking yourself, who was Asley in elementary school? Who was Asley in middle school? And who was Asley in high school? Well, clearly, Asley was one that had a lot of bubbly energy. Asley was the one that was the class clown, loved to tell a lot of jokes. But Asley was also the one that would try to fit in. Because in middle school, Asley used to get picked on a lot. And so I would try to navigate my way to where by the time I got to high school, I wasn't going to be the odd man out. And so even though I spent a lot of my time in high school, not necessarily doing well academically, I spent a lot of time trying to impress my friends. But in that, though, I would also disrespect my parents. And so to fit in, I would try to impress the people at my school, but in turns, I would disrespect my family because some of the decisions that I was making was not aligned with how I was raised. And so because of that cycle, I found myself in the back of a police car a couple times. I found myself just getting into environments where fights would be happening and gunshots would ring. And I also found myself in places where, I would use my body in a promiscuous way to try to find validation from the people that didn't even love and care about me. And so when everything came to a halt was actually when I failed my very first semester of college at Santa Fe College. And so here I am with no scholarship. I had to get my parents to take money out of their savings to pay for my first semester. And I'm making all these promises to them and to myself that I was going to do much better than I did in high school. And here I was with a 0.0 GPA as soon as the semester was over. And so at that time, I had a decision to make. I knew that life wasn't a game anymore. And I knew that because I was starting to become an adult, if I kept going down this route, it would have been very bad and negative for me. And even though my counselors had told me they believed in me, my parents had told me they believed in me, all these different voices, nothing would have mattered unless I believed it myself. And so it was initially that fall of 2010 when I was just down and out, when I was kind of facing myself in the mirror, that I made 3 decisions. I said, number 1, I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to take 5 classes instead of 3 that I failed the first time. And I'm going to spend time at the library until all my homework is done. Then number 2, I said, because the school has a gym, I shouldn't waste time doing anything. I'm going to work out every single day that I can while I step foot on that campus. And number 3, I'm only going to watch, listen to, or be around people that match where I want to go in life. Based upon those 3 decisions, I was able to go from a 0.0 to a 4.0 the very next semester. And then that started kind of transpiring everything else that went on in a positive way. So as soon as that semester ended, I reconnected with my wife. We had initially met in high school, but because I was immature, it didn't work out there. And so we reconnected back that after that semester where I passed everything, and we've been together ever since. So now the man that's speaking to you went from a young man that was immature trying to impress people to a man now who's been married for 10 years, has 2 beautiful girls, who has a great relationship with his family, loves his mom, but also is very respectful and kind to those who love him and as well as those who invested in him. also he is one now because he's received so much love. He spends his life trying to pour out that love back to others, not only in motivation and inspiration, but also in just gentleness and kindness. And so I did a lot of third person talking there. I don't know why it went that way. However, that's just the background of how you see the man that I am today.
Yeah, man, that the two of you have, and this is why the two of you together are so powerful, because of you have similar but different stories that everybody can relate to, no matter what place in life that they're at. And I want to call attention to something that you had said that I want to make sure that the audience knows, is you were fed up with the way life was being dealt to you.
Yes.
In your eyes, you're thinking, this is the way life is coming at me, right?
And I kept making excuses, and I thought like life was just happening to me at that stage. But I really had to realize that a lot of the stuff that I could change was in my control. Yeah. I could change my attitude. I could change who I'm around. I could change the environments I go into. I could change not picking up that phone call or not answering people that only want something from me. I could change that. And until I started taking those action steps, my life started to look a lot different once that became clear to me.
And what I wrote down, and I'm glad you said action steps, was exactly that, is that if you're tired of the direction that your life's going, set new goals. And then what you had said is challenge yourself to do things differently to reach your goals. Like you had non-negotiables that you established with yourself. It's like, I'm not going to negotiate these things or create excuses. And they were simple. It wasn't like a complicated system to follow. It was, this is where it's at. And it's like Romans 12:2. It's a renewing of the mind. Like you changed your mind of how you wanted to be and what you expected of yourself.
And I think the easiest part in all of that for anybody listening, like the easiest part for me was just changing my environments. Like instead of going to the club, I spent a lot more time at church. Instead of doing homework at my house, I spent a lot of time at the library. And instead of just trying to have fun with my friends or going to neighborhoods and just do different things, I just spent time in the gym. And so those three environments, spending continuously time in there, those are environments of improvements. Because people are either studying, they're reading, or they're working out. They're trying to make sure their bodies are in great shape, or they're morality-wise, they are trying to live the right way that they believe. And so in those three environments, I was inspired, and I would meet so many people that had the right track in mind.
Isn't it crazy? When you change your environment, the new people that come around. And so that speaks volumes to what you said, is you change your environment from the negative influences that you were being impacted by to now you just shifted to do positive things, and you were in the same room with positive people. And that's such a great thing that you shared that I want everybody to really hear and let it sink in for a moment, is be very aware of your surroundings. Know who you're with, know who is within arm's length away. And I can't remember, somebody said, I read it yesterday and it was almost in passing, is, be careful of who you invite to your home, and even be careful to who you put on your front porch, because you should be very picky who can get that close to you. And it's not that you're guarded or suspicious, but you know what you want and know what you need, and you know what you don't. So be very, very, very careful. And like you said earlier, is be aligned to the values of how you were raised and what you know you should live like.
For sure. I have this saying, if you stick around the barbershop long enough, you're going to get a haircut at some point. And so
I like that. Yes. I don't go to too many barbershops, but So tell the audience of how the two of you met and became great friends, and then ultimately creating this powerhouse of Noble Sheep.
I'll start.
Well, we have two stories.
Well, I feel like, so previously, after going through college, I started working for Take Stock in Children, which is a scholarship and mentoring program in the state of Florida. And I had a role as a case manager. And so I would spend one-on-one time. I had about 100 students on my caseload. And my job was to make sure that they were doing well personally, academically, as well as socially with their friends, their counselors, their teachers, and anybody that would interact with them. And so in that, we would do a lot of things for our students. And so one of the days came for us to do like this big senior workshop. And for that workshop, we decided to recruit some help from the wonderful University of Florida, which was right next door. And in University of Florida's decision, they sent a bright young man to come and partner with us to make sure the workshop would go really well for the students. And so as we're getting ready to have this big meeting, I clearly show up. I'm in my little seat here, and in comes this young man from the University of Florida, just bright, with eager, beaming eyes, just ready to take on the world. And, he sees me, I see him, we introduce ourselves. Now, we have similar versions of this story. I'm going to just say that this was the first time Jose met an angel. This was the first time Jose met somebody with a beaming light that would just change everything about his life. But he felt like he met somebody that had horns for the first time. Okay, so I don't know which story you want to believe, but he came to us. He had a meeting with our team, and then as I was hearing him speak in the meeting, as he was hearing me speak in the meeting, we realized that not only do we have similar passions to help students be their best, but we also are men of faith. We also just have some of the same values that we strive for in life. And so I got to give all the credit to Jose, because after the meeting ended, Jose did something that would change my life forever, which was that he invited me to lunch the following week. And from that, we decided to meet that following week. He was working at UF at the time, and so he had a little gift or card that they would give him to be able to buy lunch on campus. And so he used that card to buy me lunch as we were having lunch on campus. And then that conversation went from 20 minutes to 45 minutes to an hour to like almost an hour and 15. And, at that moment, you have two choices. Either you can say, hey, man, it was great talking to you. Hopefully I'll see you in the future. But because the conversations were going so well, Jose and I both knew that this could really go somewhere. But I told him this, because I was really busy at the time. I believe that, I had been married for 3 years at the time. And, my wife and I we had just took in her younger sister to kind of help her get back on track. So I was like, hey, man, I have no time on my hands. I'm working and I'm doing all this stuff. But if you really want to meet me again, I want you to meet me at 5 a.m. so we can go for a morning walk. All right, we're going to meet next to UF's campus, and at 5 a.m., if you can meet me there on Saturday, I'll give you my time so we can continue to get to know each other. Jose, of course, said yes, and when that Saturday came, I pulled up to the spot around like 4:55 or so, and guess who was already there waiting for me? Jose Alvarez. And then from that Saturday, every Saturday or Sunday now for the past 7 years, Jose and I have met for about an hour to an hour and a half for our morning walks or sometimes our morning drive. And then it's from those conversations that a friendship led to a brotherhood, and the brotherhood led to a business, and the business has led to us just trying to inspire as many youth as we can with the Power Up message.
Man, that's awesome. Was there a strategic decision for 5 a.m. on a Saturday?
It's just because I wake up early anyway. And so growing up, a couple of the mentors that I've had while I was like in college, they would work out at 5 a.m. And so my option was like, if I'm going to do anything with them, it's going to be at 5 a.m. And so to see if he was serious, I also proposed the same thing to him. And he ended up being serious. And we've been doing that ever since.
Yeah, every week now for 7 years, 5 o'clock in the morning. He's the only person I will wake up on the weekend at that time for, but it's all worth it because a little bit about me. Whenever I went to that meeting, Asley didn't know that during my time in college, I was really involved and I had a lot of acquaintances, a lot of peers that I would hang out with. But I remember one day as I was approaching graduation at the University of Florida, I was like, God, I don't really have friends. Like, I don't really have anybody to ask me how I'm doing. They're just looking at all the awards, the accolades, the recognition, all of these things that I had and all the involvement in leadership positions, but I did not have a true friend. And so I always say I prayed for a friend, but God gave me a brother. And Asley was that guy that God just ended up bringing, literally, like after I prayed that couple weeks after I walked across the stage, he came into my life and the rest been history.
And the cool thing, and so, from our walks and our conversations, it was then time for me to transition out of that job, Take Stock in Children, to start becoming a college advisor at Santa Fe College. But Jose took over the position and the kids didn't skip a beat. And so it's almost like our lives were like similarly aligning to the point where, we just decided, hey, we still love kids so much and we love doing workshops. So let's just try to merge together and see where this speaking, how many people we can impact with our gifts.
Yeah, so we took a leap of faith, a small leap of faith. We didn't know what we were doing during COVID, and we just kind of cold emailed a bunch of pre-collegiate programs and anybody serving youth, and we're like, hey, can we come do a workshop for you virtually? And everybody was struggling with student engagement during that time, during COVID, because all the kids had the cameras off, like, and weren't participating. And we would come in and everyone's like, oh my gosh, when COVID lifted, they're like, can y'all come in person? What's y'all's fees? We're like, fees? We don't know.
We don't know.
Like we didn't know. And then that God just blessed it ever since, and we didn't realize that one day we'd be doing this full time and doing it for a living.
But it all came, it all came from us really just having the right intention, I would say.
Yeah.
Because we really want students to be powered up. We really want students to be great leaders. And so before we had even sent those emails, we were going around in our local schools and we would go to different classrooms and do what we call classroom takeover, in which would do like mini workshops for like 20, 30, 15 students. And we would go classroom by classroom in the different high schools that were in town to be able to share this message that we had. And then we believed in our youth so much too that Jose and I got a chance to partner with Eastside High School to do a TEDx youth event. And we helped coach about 8 different students from Eastside to be able to share their story in front of about 100 people for a TEDx event.
But now thousands, because they are literally on the TEDx platform. Like now millions of people get to view their stories across the country. And we were the first TEDx youth conference in the entire North Central Florida to do that. So that was a pretty cool moment.
And there's so much to add. But I want to say too, Jeff, that the reason why Jose and I really got started was a lot of times because of the burden that we felt for students in those one-on-one conversations, in talking to their families, and just being in the school environments themselves and just seeing how people interact with each other, feeling some of the tension that the staff would feel and the teachers would feel. And then also too, just like seeing a lot of hopelessness, when we would walk through the hallways and when we would just have these different moments. And I was like, man, I would hate for students to miss out, especially if nobody said to them that, hey, life doesn't have to be this way, or hey, there's hope at the end of the tunnel, or hey, like something, you can make something of your life. And so we decided to share a message that we didn't hear often where we grew up.
And I'm so thankful that you prayed that prayer that brought you guys together. And it's neat that you remember that, because that's that pivotal point in both of your lives. And it was something that Asley, you didn't even know that you were asking for that happened. And and it's also a good lesson is that the people around you are the people that you've probably prayed for. And if you didn't pray for them, they may have prayed for you. So you are the answer to someone's prayer. And I think that just adds value to so much of our lives, is that we know that we can impact others. One of the other things that you said while we're on that topic is that you didn't really have a true friend, Jose. And that's something I'm curious of in your conversations and in your observations in the school system and, young people and that secondary education college world. How many would you say are plagued with that same statement of, I don't really have a true friend?
Yeah, I think a majority of young people, but even just men in particular. Like I talk to a lot of young men, and what bridges them with other guys is just they have things in common. Sports, they're in the same classes, they're in the same organizations. But like that's the only thing that really holds them together. There's no vulnerability, no transparency, no friend that sticks closer than a brother type of mindset happening there, like, or a brother is born for a time of adversity. Like it's still like everything's just surface level. And I had experienced that. Like everyone would probably say, Jose, you had like hundreds of friends. Like you were everyone knew you on campus, but it was like, no, that's the point. No one knew me for me. They just knew me for the resume, for the involvement, for the things that I was doing.
And similar tracking in terms of my friendships that I had in high school and in college, I think partly there were a lot of friends that were just convenient.
Yeah.
Because we were there at the same place at the same time. We were kind of forced to be there in the same environment. And so you kind of grow close to some of the people that are around you. But I feel like for friendship, a lot of people mistake convenience with commitment. And so when those seasons change, that's when you realize if people are really committed to you or not. And so I think early on in our walks and in our talks, Jose and I realized that, hey, man, this is something that we're going to be committed to. And so even now, if Jose decides to move to Chicago or if Jose decides to move to California or wherever, we're still going to have that solid hour once a week, however it is, because Jose and I are committed. And this is not just out of convenience. I've moved houses and switched. Jose's moved cities and switched. But guess what? We still find a way to link up every single week to have those conversations.
Yeah. And I want to take it deeper. So you have convenience, then you have commitment, but then you have covenant. Right, we hear a lot about David and Jonathan and just Jesus and his like 3 guys that he would hang out with and things like that. And one of the things I always say is, now that Asley and I are making money together and doing this for a living, number 1, he's always going to be my brother. Number 2, he's my best friend. He's my brother in Christ. And then he's my business partner. And so if business ever gets in the way, I'm gonna protect these 3 things first before that. Like if whatever I need to do, leave the business, whatever, to keep this brotherhood and this friendship going, I am willing to leave everything behind to protect what we have, because I know that this is God assigned, God ordained.
And I would say too, for everybody listening, like, part of how you can see the outcomes in your life, it's really partly who you're attached to and who you call your brother, who you call your sister, who do you call when crisis is happening in your life, who do you call when you want to celebrate something or when you want to mourn about something. Whoever is on the end of that phone call, they have a lot more influence than we would usually think so. Because Jose and I have spent so much time together, not only do we dress alike, not only do we have similar haircuts, but we also say the same words. We also laugh the same now. We also, listen to the same music. We drive the same car. I mean, there's a lot of similarities that have happened over time. But the same similarities happen when I had friends in high school. When they would go out places and I know I shouldn't be there, I would go to those places and I know I shouldn't be there. If they would dress a certain way, I would dress the same way. And they would decide to smoke, guess what times I would smoke, right? And so whatever habits you need, if your closest friends are not living in those ways, then you got to figure out, am I going to influence you or are you going to influence me? Likely you're both influencing each other. But if it's not where you want to go, then you might have to let that person go.
Strong. And I agree with everything that you said, because I want adults to hear that. And I know that you message primarily to young people, but we were all young once and we all carry the same challenges into our adulthood because of we never were able to get it fixed before or just be pointed in the right direction. And several of the things that you said about a covenant and having a friendship, it's being authentic with one another and feeling safe. And so the easiest way to feel safe with someone is to make them feel safe and make them understand that you're there for their good. You're there to serve them, to care for them, and not be the one that they can't depend on. And authenticity is where it starts. It's just being you and accepting one another. And even in a disagreement, it's okay. It's okay for you to think this way and I think this way, and we can still be friends and we can still be brothers. So many times in this world, as soon as you have a different point of view, you're on the opposite side, and it's trying to convince you while you're wrong and why I'm right. And because you're choosing this, you can't eat pizza or you don't want to eat pizza and I like tacos. Well, you're wrong. Why don't you like tacos? I don't like tacos. And you'll see people get like, what do you mean you don't like Chick-fil-A? Which I still think is weird when people don't like Chick-fil-A, but it's okay.
Yes, but that's very truthful. And I think, adults are just bigger kids. Adults are just bigger kids. And when you look at our screen time compared to our kids' screen time, it's probably about the same. When you look at our social media usage in comparison to theirs, I mean, we may use Facebook, but they're using it's the same thing. When we're craving for validation and we're craving for likes and we're craving for attention, it's the same thing our students are experiencing. And so both sides help each other.
Yes. And what you had said earlier is about priorities, and Jose talked about where the priorities lie, is that, for so many years I had it, business was first, because I thought that's what I needed to do as a provider. I needed to work. I needed to climb the corporate ladder, have the new titles on the business cards, get raises, all those things. When in actuality, everything else was just falling apart because I was just so focused on doing all those things. And then once all that got flipped and it was God first, family second, work third, I've never been happier in my life.
Wow.
And just like what you guys did, is that you changed everything and everything started working just the way it's been ordained to work, which is great.
And I think, Jeff, man, I needed that. So I'm glad you shared that. And partly, I think, when did because that's a moment of clarity that you experience. And so I guess, I know you're supposed to interview us, but I'm really curious to know, at what moment did you realize like something needs to change, or if not, like I'm gonna lose it all? Like what stage? Yeah.
It was an absolute rock bottom that I had based on decisions that I had been making that were not aligned to my values. I'd always known my values, but I never lived them to where I could have rattled off what words were. But then if you would have compared my actions to what I was saying, it was not anywhere close. And it was, God whispers to us a lot. And I know he had been whispering to me for about a decade, and I just wasn't listening because I just created so much noise in my life. And finally, he just punched me in the nose. It was time. And he was like, okay, here's your choice. How are you going to respond? And thankfully, due to my wonderful wife, is that, I had hid so much of who I was, even from her. And we'd been married for 11 years. And things that I had just carried with me since I was probably 5. And I just never wanted to share because I knew I had convinced myself, if I tell anybody any of these things of how I feel, things that maybe I had done, that they were going to turn and run the other way and think I was a weirdo or just strange or whatever. All those lies that the devil chooses to help us believe. And I hit that moment, and we sat on the couch and I just let it all out. It was like, Chunk in the Goonies. I went back to 2nd grade and just rattled everything off. And then I'll never forget, she looked at me and she's like, okay, I'm still here. Wow. And that was the moment. That was the moment, is that I knew that God had assigned her to me for this moment as we're sitting on this couch and how to move forward. And that's when everything changed. And I made, just like you did, I changed everything intentionally. And it started for me as I deleted apps off my phone. I deleted all the things that were distractions. And I said, I'm going to read. I had the YouVersion Bible app. And I was like, I'm going to read a daily Bible verse, because I was raised in the church. Like, I knew how to live. I knew how I should be living. And I just chose to be the prodigal son and go away and do it my own way. And I said, I'm going to read a Bible verse every day. And then every day turned into every week. And now I'll let you know what it is today. I'm on day, let me get started back. I'm on day 2,390 in a row. And like you had said, those small changes, it was reading a Bible verse every day, turned into, well, let me find a devotion. And then it was like, let me invite somebody to the devotion. Then it was like, let me have 2 or 3 devotions going, because there's different elements that I need. And now I've got 4 friends that we've done the whole Bible 4 years in a row. So we listen to that every day. So it's been that 1% change has dramatically changed everything about me. And it also started with me writing my own mission statement. So I had been following some Navy SEALs. I'm fascinated with the service people, and especially the special forces community. They're really cool. And so they had an ethos, and they talked about this is what drove them. So I decided to make my own. And if I have it here, so I'll read it to you. And this changed me. I read it every single day, multiple times a day, because I wanted to have that renewing of the mind.
Yes.
And so I live a Christ-like centered life focused on loving others. I'm grateful for the abundance I have in every aspect of my life. I maintain a high level of integrity to live as a good example to others and keep promises I make to myself. I will be confident in who I am and what I stand for. And then my verse is Galatians 2:20. So that literally changed my life. That mission statement.
Woo, boy, you just saved me on many levels. All right, I'm gonna take you out to dinner to share more explicitly, but thank you.
My pleasure. But thank you for the question, because I can't get tired of sharing that, because that mission statement and deciding how I wanted to live, which resonated, your part of the story resonated with me so much, is you made a decision that I'm tired of this and it's time to go in a different direction. And how do I do that? And there were elements where there was times where I actually felt bad that friends were falling away. Like I took it personal. And then it took me time to think of, well, they weren't serving me. Meaning not that they were serving me, but they weren't serving that mission statement that I was writing. It doesn't mean I can't be friends with anymore, but they're a distraction to what's greater for me as well.
Amen.
And one of the things that hit me just the other day, I was listening to, there's a motivation podcast, and they compile all these different quotes and different speeches. And one of them was Kobe Bryant and Tim Grover. And I'm kind of a Tim Grover fan sometimes, but not. But when I listened to it, though, I listened to it differently, because I was struggling with where I was at, because I haven't had much quote unquote professional success since I was laid off in 2021. And that's a whole nother story and a whole nother podcast, but I'm on the right path. But he was talking about balance, and we talk about winning so much and of how important it is to win. And he was like, sometimes you just can't have balance when you want to win. And it hit me as, you know what? I'm out of balance because I'm supposed to be focusing more on my relationship with God and my family than I am my professional life, because I had it so different before. So it's okay to be out of balance as long as you're focused on the right things, and be okay with where you're at right now, but never stop pursuing and powering up to go where you need to be.
Man, wow. That's good.
You just made me talk way more on my own podcast.
No, and I think this is good, man, because this is something that I want to share. Even in Jose and I's journeys, even in Jeff's journey as well, like some of the best things in life that happen to us, like we just happen to be at the right place at the right time, with the right attitude in mind. Okay, so how I met my wife again, how we reconnected, that was something that I would have never imagined first seeing her out of high school. How I met Jose, that was a meeting that wasn't planned by any of us. It was somebody else planned a meeting that we just both happened to show up to. How we're meeting Jeff now today. So like a lot of the things in life, I feel like, because people can get caught up in just trying to find their purpose and trying to do X, Y, and Z. But like, man, your steps are ordered. Just take a step. Just walk. Walk intentionally in the way that you know you're supposed to. Do the things you know you're supposed to do today. And the things of tomorrow will take care of itself. The people of tomorrow will take care of themselves. And I think when I look back in my life, like that was the times where I was the most free, when I didn't worry about tomorrow, but I was just trying to take a step that day.
Yeah.
Amen. I didn't know if Jose had anything to add. And it's powerful, because when you look back and you think about the time of the struggle, and it's the process, it has nothing to do with the outcome. And if you focus on the process, the outcome always takes care of itself. You just may be too small, looking at things in a too small of a narrow vision of really where it's at. Because we can all look back and go, like you said, that was really difficult, but I'm so glad that I went through that. And here I am on the other side. My son, he's an athlete. And so I took him to a new trainer last year. And he told me, he's like, Dad, and he's an offensive lineman. So him doing a lot of running and sprints and all that stuff is not up his alley. And so this guy does intense training for an hour. And so we took him to one, and you could just tell he hated every minute of it. And so we're on the drive to the training. And he's like, Dad, I have thought about this all day long at school. I couldn't think about anything else other than going to this training today. I did not want to go. And I was like, I understand it, buddy. It's important. It's something that you need to do. And he's like, okay. So then when he got done, he's like, I actually feel really good. I was like, okay. I was like, okay, there you go. And I reassured him, and this is a lesson for all of us as adults when we see young people do hard things and have these epiphanies, is I told him, I was like, buddy, let me just tell you something. You are in the top 1% of the world of looking at something and not wanting to do it all day long, but you did it anyway.
Yeah.
And I said, that you're doing more than most people do on the planet. Most people just like, I'm going to make an excuse. I'm not going to go. And then he did it. And he's like, and and this is where another lesson is, people pay attention to what you say and how you live. He's like, you always said that your mind will quit before your body will. And so he's like, I just knew that I could get through it. It was only an hour. And it was like, I did everything I could not to start crying, because I wanted to live as a good example for him to see what doing hard things are. And now he's capable. He's equipped with pushing through the hard parts of life.
And that is the essence of the Power Up message. You know, Jose and I, in our speaking career, even in our personal journeys, you know, we've shared so many messages with people, but Power Up just kept sticking. And Jose and I made a commitment to that message that, hey, above what anything else that people hear from us, it is going to be to power up. And specifically, the tagline is, when life gets tough, power up. Because it's in those toughest times that you find out what you're made of. It's in those toughest times that when you look back, there's joy over how much you've overcome. It's in those toughest times that a lot of times the greatest people out of your life will come and they will form. And so I'm truly appreciative of the toughest times in my life, because they have made me who I am today. And it's powered me up for the next toughest times in my life. And then those will power me up for the next toughest times in my life. And so when life gets tough, power up.
Let's go. I'm ready. That's awesome. That's fantastic. And I really have enjoyed the conversation, and we haven't gotten to the questions, and that I had a few. I just like organic conversations. And so I'm glad I didn't have to go to the questions. What I would ask, and I'll ask Jose, is when you're thinking about leadership and you're thinking about how people misconstrue the idea of leadership with a title, and how people can step into being a good leader, whether they have a title or not. What is something that you can help the audience understand about leadership?
So I actually went back to UF and got my master's in leadership development. And during my time there getting my master's, I spent 2 years studying toxic leadership. And one of the things I saw in my research was toxic leadership roots from unresolved childhood trauma, which is why I'm now working with middle high school students, even young college students, and helping them really develop success from the inside out. Because a lot of times, if we don't address what's happening on the inside, we're going to overcompensate with the awards, the titles, the validation, the affirmation, the recognition. All of these things are given to us so that we don't have to deal with the ugliness that's on the inside. And so the other thing I learned in grad school, though, is there's a difference between leaders and managers. And so we have people who are great managers, but they've been given a leadership role or position too soon. And so the thing that I would say to people for leadership is, number one, you got to understand that you have a level of influence, and how you use that influence is either going to steer people the wrong way or the right way. But people are looking up to you. So as a leader, you literally have to, from now on, hold yourself to a higher standard in everything that you do. because people are watching every single move. Like now, Asley and I always joke around with him that we've been speaking at the University of Florida now for like 7 years. And so when I tell him, when we go to Walmart, when we go to Publix, anywhere locally, we don't know who all was in the audience. And so we cannot act a fool at the red light if we're cutting somebody off, because people are like, those are Noble Sheep. That's Jose and Asley. Those are the power up guys. Man, that's the one thing I want to leave behind with people is hold yourself to a higher standard, but also you got to heal yourself, because heal people, just like hurt people.
Man, I want that to sink in. And it's so true. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because, you know, how many people that we encounter that are mean, horrible bosses that we say mean, horrible things about them because of how they make us feel. And if you think about what Jose just shared is that toxic leadership comes from childhood trauma, would that change your perspective? It's not that you're agreeing with the way they lead and what they do, but you don't know where that came from. And it doesn't mean you need to stick with it either. And but at the same token is, will that help you be more compassionate and say, look, I don't agree with how they handle that, but I understand where, man, they must have had something bad happen to their life to want to treat other people this way. And that's helped me just position things differently.
Yeah. And I would say leaders need accountability. So definitely address the issue, how they've treated you, but again, approach them with that compassion, because a lot of times they may not even realize that they're doing or speaking in the tone that, like, to them, that's just how they grew up. It was their norm to, you know, be very straightforward, to be very blunt or whatever, and not realizing like, oh man, maybe I should tone it down a little bit. Maybe I need to email after I drink my coffee, like, you know, but no one's ever told them. So the cycle continues. And kind of stepping into the corporate world, that's why you start to see a lot of turnover. People just leave toxic environments and the cycle continues because no one ever stopped to just address the actual problem. They're like, I'm just resigning, I'm gonna go find a different job. It's like, no, you might be the one that actually stops the cycle by addressing it.
Yeah, I heard Simon Sinek in his book Start With Why, and it resonated so much with me about how you address some of those things. And it's, you know, not just scolding them. It's like, hey, you know what? This isn't normally how you show up. Like, what's going on that's making you show up this way, versus like scolding them for what they do, or, you know what, you know, how you're leading right now is not resonating. It's not connecting with the team. What are some of where did you learn how to lead this way, or just trying to uncover some of those things in an understanding way? And again, how they respond to it is how they respond. But if we approach them differently, I think we've got a better opportunity to help them.
Yeah, definitely.
Go ahead.
In our leadership experience working with youth, and just even now in the space that we're in, I think a big question that I would pose to any inspiring leader or leader right now is how you cope says a lot about who you are as a leader. How you cope with stress, how you cope, what do you run to when nobody's looking? That is a thing that will either destroy you or it can enhance your ability to serve others. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that what happens in the dark will eventually come out in the light. And so who you are in private when nobody's watching, what are you running to try to manage your stress, to try to cope with what's going on in your life, whatever those things are. If you're doing them in the dark and they're not healthy, they will come out in the light eventually. And so I think a lot of times what we're seeing with toxic leaders or people that are just not doing well, it is those behaviors in the dark that are just starting to come to the light. If they're talking about you behind your back, eventually that's going to come out in how they share with you and how they say to you. If they don't like you when you're not there, that's going to come out in how they talk to you and how they say certain things. And so my thing with you at the same time is, how do you then respond to that when nobody's watching? Are you cussing them out when they're not looking? Are you being spiteful? Are you thinking of all the bad things you wish would happen to them? Because that's going to come out in your tone as well. And so I say that in full circle for both young and adults to just let's be careful of what we're practicing in the dark, because that will be what comes to light eventually.
Yeah. And the scripture that came to mind as Asley was talking was, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And so we got to constantly renew our mind, but also have God check our hearts and as well. Tongue. Yeah, so we'll need a part 2, Jeff. We'll have to do a part 2 so we can continue the conversation.
There's no question. And to your point, Jose, is there's, David talks about in the Psalms about how he prayed and asked God to seek and look at his heart. And I'll challenge everybody, pray that prayer, but be very ready for all the things that are gonna. It's a scary prayer. I'm like, do I actually say this? Because I'm not sure if I'm ready to address some of these things, but it is powerful, but it all comes from the heart. So on that topic, what are some things from your heart that you'd like to leave the audience with today?
Don't hide. Okay. There's somebody listening to this podcast, and you heard Jeff talk about how he hid things since the age of 5. He hid things, and once he revealed them, he knew who really loved them, and that gave him the courage and the strength to go on with his life and not repeat those same patterns. Same for me. For us and Jose to have this brotherhood, there are so many things that we had to take out of the darkness and come into the light for it to be able to go for 8 years. And so there's somebody listening to this podcast right now to where you're hiding something. I don't know if it's something that needs to be said or something that happened to you, but please just come out in the light with it, because it's no good if you're experiencing it in the dark by yourself. Let somebody know that you love and that you trust for you to just get the help that you need to get.
Amen.
Jose, anything, or is that enough?
That's enough.
That was good.
Yeah.
Now, how can people find and follow you?
Yeah, so you could go to our Instagram at noble.sheep, NOBLE.sheep, like the animal, and or visit our website, www.noblesheep.com. We got a YouTube,
Facebook,
LinkedIn, all that good stuff. But we're mostly active on a day-to-day basis on Instagram. So if you got one, definitely would love for you to follow us and connect with us.
But if you're ever in Gainesville, Florida, you will find us walking somewhere in Gainesville, Florida between 5 and 6 a.m. So if you see us, feel free to honk and just say woo-woo, because we're power up.
Yeah, there you go. Say power up as many times as you possibly can and tell your friends. But Asley and Jose, thank you so much for the time that you spent with us today. I'm going to have everything that they just shared in the show notes, so that way you can't miss it. But please go find and follow them. And because whether or not you need to hire them to come in and motivate you and your teams, they're going to motivate and encourage you just with their daily messages. So it won't be a follow that you will regret for sure. Well, gentlemen, hang on one second. But ladies and gentlemen, Noble Sheep. Thanks for joining us on the Pathways to Greatness podcast. We hope that today's conversation inspired you to take steps towards your own greatness. Remember, every journey starts with a single step. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who might benefit. Actually, share it with 3 people that you might think it might benefit. Until next time, keep pursuing your passions and carving your own path to greatness. Take care.